everyone. Welcome to the Times and Sunday Times Cheltenham Literature Festival. I'm Sam Baker, journalist and author, and I'm delighted to be here to host Scottish Writing today. From Robert Burns to Douglas Stewart, by way of Arthur Conan Doyle, Muriel Spark, Ali Smith, Irvine Welsh, Granite Noir of Denise Mina, Ian Rankin, Val McDermid and Willie McIlvanney. Scotland's rich literary heritage is indisputable. So why isn't it shouted about more? Here to present their latest work and discuss what it means to be a Scottish writer are novelists Graham Mcrae Burnett and Graham Armstrong and poet Janette Ayachi. Before I introduce our guests properly, just a little bit of housekeeping. We don't do anything old-fashioned like raise hands to ask questions anymore. So there will be Q&A at the end, and at some point, yes, and there's the instructions. You do it on your phone.
Wow. What? Is that serious? You do it on your phone? Are they going to phone us? I left my phone through there.
Yeah, so we've got Graham's phone. He's taking the calls.
Oh, my God.
No, shut up. I know I said you could interject, but I didn't mean yet.
Sorry, this is the most exciting thing that's happened at an event for ages.
He doesn't get out often, honestly.
No, I don't.
So,
nobody does.
That's true, honestly. So, where was I? Submit your questions as we go, as you think of them, and we'll do questions at the end. But it's really good to see where, what's interesting you, and I can kind of weave those things in. So, right, back to our panel. The noisy Graham at the end is a Kilmarnock-born, Glasgow-based writer whose second novel, His Bloody Project, was shortlisted for the Booker Prize and went on to sell twice as many copies as the eventual winner. Just saying. It was also Saltire Fiction Book of the Year 2016. He's written 3 other novels, the latest of which is the just-published case study set in the 1960s psychotherapy world. It was only published last Thursday and has already been lauded as a page-turning blast, funny, sinister, and perfectly plotted by the Times. Poet Janette Ayachi is an Edinburgh-based Scottish-Algerian poet. Her debut collection, Hand Over Mouth Music, a dazzling examination of the body informed by her Scottish-Algerian roots, I'm told, was Saltire Poetry Book of the Year 2019. Her poems have been widely published in literary journals and anthologies, and her work is featured on BBC Radio Scotland and BBC Radio 4. She's currently dipping her toe outside the poetry world and working on a memoir, which we'll talk about a bit later. And yep, there are more Grahams on this panel than there are women of colour.
One on either side of me.
Yeah. But we'll let you off. Graham Armstrong is a Scottish writer from Airdrie. His teenage years were spent in North Lanarkshire's gang culture, and he was inspired to study English literature after reading Trainspotting at 16. His debut novel, The Young Team, was inspired by his experiences and was greeted with what can only be described as euphoria on publication. So here's a taster. Swaggering and Incendiary, The Guardian. Trainspotting for a New Generation, The Independent. And a landmark of Scottish literature by the Big Scottish Book Club's Damien Barr, who curated this event. It won the Somerset Maugham, a Betty Trask, and was named Scots Book of the Year 2021. Welcome, everybody. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend a few minutes with each writer. Each writer will do a reading and we'll ask a few questions. And then we'll broaden out the conversation to talk more about the themes in their work and then about Scotland and what it means to be a Scottish writer. So starting with Graham at the end.
Oh,
Earlier, you were just telling me how well brought up you were.
I'm very well brought up.
You've just misbehaved ever since you got here.
Yeah.
Come on, do your reading.
He's quiet, and the minute he's on stage,
am I doing the reading right away?
Yeah.
Can I just explain a little bit about what the book's about first?
Of course you can, yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much. What a great audience and a beautiful room. And thank you for the lovely introduction, Sam. As you said, my new book, Case Study, came out on Thursday. So I'm very new to talking about it and explaining what it's about. But it really concerns, the protagonist is a young woman in her mid-20s who suspects that a radical psychotherapist called Collins Braithwaite has driven her sister Veronica to suicide. And in order to investigate this, she does what any normal person would do under the circumstances and presents herself as a client to Collins Braithwaite under the assumed name, and to some extent assumed persona, of Rebecca Smith. The book is told in the form of 5 notebooks, which very fortunately have been sent to me anonymously. And those sections are interspersed with my own biographical sections about Collins Braithwaite. I'm just going to read the very beginning of the first notebook. So you need to picture me as a young woman of about 25. You probably were doing that already.
Not hard.
No kind of stretch.
And the setting, I should say, is London in 1965. I've decided to write down everything that happens because I feel, I suppose, I may be putting myself in danger, and if proved to be right, a rare occurrence, admittedly, this notebook might serve as some kind of evidence. Regrettably, as will become clear, I have little talent for composition. As I read over my previous sentence, I do rather cringe. But if I dilly-dally over style, I fear I will never get anywhere. Miss Lyle, my English mistress, used to chide me for trying to cram too many thoughts into a single sentence. This, she said, was a sign of a disorderly mind. You must first decide what it is you wish to say, then express it in the plainest terms. That was her mantra, and though it is doubtless a good one, I can see that I have already failed. I have said that I may be putting myself in danger, but there I go off on an irrelevant digression. Rather than beginning again, however, I shall press on. What matters here is substance rather than style, that these pages constitute a record of what is to occur. It may be that were my narrative too polished, it might lack credibility, that somehow the ring of truth lies in infelicity. In any case, I cannot follow Miss Lyle's advice, as I do not yet know what it is I wish to say. However, for the sake of anyone unfortunate enough to find themselves reading this, I will endeavour to be clear, to express myself in the plainest terms. In this spirit, I shall begin by stating the facts. The danger to which I have alluded comes in the person of Collins Braithwaite. You will have heard him described in the press as Britain's most dangerous man. This on account of his ideas about psychiatry. It is my belief, however, that it is not merely his ideas that are dangerous. I am convinced, you see, that Dr. Braithwaite killed my sister Veronica. I do not mean that he murdered her in the normal sense of the word, but that he is, nonetheless, as responsible for her death as if he had strangled her with his bare hands. 2 years ago, Veronica threw herself from the overpass at Bridge Approach in Camden and was killed by the 445 to High Barnet. You could hardly imagine a person less likely to commit such an act. She was 26 years old, intelligent, successful, and passably attractive. Regardless of this, she had, unbeknown to my father and me, been consulting Dr. Braithwaite for some weeks. This I know from his own account.
Delayed clap there.
So what is it? There you are, you're blurring fact and fiction again, aren't you? It's one of your things.
Well, people always ask me about fact and fiction. I never particularly feel that I am, although I'm already with this book, people have told me that they've Googled Collins Braithwaite, and when I write about Collins Braithwaite, I do so in the style of literary biography, so it kind of signifies reality. And there are a lot of real people who have walk-on parts in the book, like R.D. Laing and Dirk Bogarde. Joan Bakewell, who I think is coming to the festival, she has she's in a footnote. So I hope if any of you see Joan Bakewell, please tell her that she's a footnote in my book. I'm sure she'll be really flattered. But I think I'm putting my characters into this recognisable world of the 60s, and I'm kind of weaving them in. So I think that creates an air of reality. And, the structure of the book is similar to his bloody project in that, I claim to have been sent or have found a set of documents, and I do go to some lengths to authenticate that. So I do bring these questions on myself. Why am I doing it? I'm not really sure. I don't know. But I think it's very interesting that, when we read a novel, any novel, we're engaged in this practice where we know that something is fictional, but we want to believe it and we want to feel it's real. And then when you're reading a novel and it seems real, but is actually fiction, we get a bit annoyed. Feel like we've been tricked. But actually, what we're doing whenever we read a novel is taking part. We're complicit. And I say this as a reader. We're entering a world that is not real, but we want to feel it's real. And I think that's the important thing about enjoying a novel, this feeling of authenticity, feeling of reality.
You're one of those authors, aren't you, who's a publisher's nightmare? You write a really successful book and then you write something completely different.
Oh, I'm very lucky because I'm still with the same small publisher, Saraban Books, and my first book, which, if anybody's read my first book, I will come into the audience and kiss you. I don't care about COVID. It's called The Disappearance of Adele Badeau, and it's set in a small town in France and features a cop called George Gorski. And I met my publisher for the first time and said, "Whoa, what are you working on?" And I said, "Oh, I'm writing a novel set in 19th century Scotland." And she said, "Oh, brilliant, that sounds great." And I think a lot of publishers would have said, maybe you need to have a brand and be recognizable. But I've always wanted just to write the books I want to write. And what's become interesting to me, having written books with very different historical and geographical settings, is to find yourself returning somehow and completely without intention to the same kind of tropes and themes and obsessions. If my publisher was here, she would say I'm a nightmare, no doubt.
Other Graham, are you getting that from your publisher already? Okay, write another young team?
Not quite, no, because I've already determined what I'm going to write, and it's a different animal completely. This is a very serious auto-fiction book based on my lived experience. So I'm only 30, so I don't have that much lived experience.
You've run out of lived experience now.
Yeah, well, just about. I think I've got a novel about selling cars in there somewhere. So, but the next one's about rave culture. So, a bit light-hearted, This was a lot of emotional labour. This one.
Yeah, you want a bit of a break. Do you want to read us a bit from the young team?
Just good evening, everybody. Just a bit of context to this one, and I'm being a bit naughty and reading at the end of the book, which I don't usually do, but it'll give you some flavour of it. And the main character, Azzy, he's left and come back, and the gang are still very much up to involved in violence with their rivals. And Azzy's trying to take a more positive life path, but as the third part of the novel goes on, he's been sucked ever more gradually towards violence, and in his mother's windows were put in. So this is the culmination of that. And there is some strong language, if you'll forgive me. I'm back in mine. The Friday feeling is reaching new peaks. It had been simmering all day, stable fuel without fire, but now it's a volatile compound waiting for one wee source ignition, and my fuse is lit and sparking away, heading towards the charge. And I'm pacing my room, a blur, a orange train spotting poster, Union flag, and Tupac Shakur. I'm smoking fags and listening to Bruni's CD earlier, but the trance tunes are picking up, getting faster and only adding to my higher state of consciousness. I can't eat and I can't sleep, because the Friday feeling is a powerful drug in itself. I feel out my nut, charging on nicotine, adrenaline, anger. It's only a matter of time before I fucking blow. There's a bottle of wine sitting staring at me, and it's Buckfast, not shooting off the park, by the way. It's yellow label and green bottle, calling out for me to neck it and have a wee fucking tan. Get it done, you son. Even Tupac's talking to me, nodding and telling me to do it. On you go, Azzy boy. Keep it OG player. Machiavelli the Dawn, thug life. So I go for it. I crack its gold crown and get a wee screw off. Drink long and deep. A good fucking healthy neck at it. And feel that instant warm rush of alcohol and caffeine. Tonic is the fuel. The tunes are fucking blaring. And the Azzy boy is on it. I'm halfway through my wine when the door gets rattled. I can only just hear it or the tunes. It creaks open and I make out footsteps on the stairs, but I'm not grabbing no fucking bats, because the Aussie boy is mad with it, ready for anything. I bounce off the bed and go to the door. Stacey, and she's got a look on, one like your fucking ma, in a bad mood with you. Hiya, we no feeling. What's the matter with you? It's Friday bells. You're drunk, wee man. Aussie boy's no drunk, fuck's sake. Aiya, fucking stinking of buckfast as well. Not even been swallowing, you dafty. What's happened to you? You're like a different guy who the one who came back up, back sitting in trackies in a Rangers trap, drinking wine, steaming early evening. Charming, Aussie. Fucking charming, son. What a hit with a decent lassie you'll be. There's no decent lassies about here anyway, don't worry. No, yours fucked off, didn't she? And just as well, if this is how you're planning to conduct yourself. Calm it, Janet. I've not drunk properly for ages. Why are you sitting on your own guzzling tonic? I'm no fuck. I've took 2 drinks out my bottle while I'm getting ready to go. Drinking tonic wine, feeling fine. Oh, and where are you fit for going? No over that door, I hope, because you fucking stink. Look, you're my big cousin. I love you, but if you're just here to fucking moan, you can get out. What's happened to you? What do you mean? Is this the transformation complete? Between somebody away from here and moving on and back to their fate? Because I'm not kidding. It's like Jekyll and fucking Hyde. Oh, calm down. Don't be stupid. You're so close, cousin. So close to actually realising this place is dead. Come on, Alan. Do you know it, pal? My bravado eases for a moment. Stacey's like a sister and a best mate rolled into one. One of the cool birds for Big Kenzie's Lost Generation. She was always one of my best pals, really. Always there to pick up the pieces when it went wrong. And I owed her that respect. So, tell me in your infinite wisdom, what is a guy to do? Stacey glances down towards a holdall, which my ma's been surreptitiously filling with washed and ironed clothes. There's a wee suitcase being filled in the front room and all, where all the t-shirts and socks keep disappearing into. That was her gentle nudge. She would give me some money, and that'd be me. Bon voyage. See that bag sitting on the floor? Aye. Pack it and beat it. How's that for infinite wisdom? Not that complicated, is it? And go where? You know where? Either go to Paris and get your woman who's missing like mad, or go it alone, somewhere else long term. Anywhere you like, take your pick. It's a big world out there. Aye, I'm hearing you. So which is it? I don't know yet, fuck's sake. It's a big decision. I'm going to skip on a wee bit. He keeps drinking the wine. And needless to say, his rival's phone. The next phone call's a bit different. The phone's ringing, piercing into my brain, but there's nothing to hold us back now, because I'm fucking mad with it. Off my fucking head, Jekyll and fucking Hyde. As a fucking Williams, you dafty. Young team for life, kick to kill, stab for fun, hit the green button, here we fucking go. Is that Azzy? You fucking know who it is, you again. The infamous toys that you're so waiting for. You run your fucking scheme as always, wee man. Only running you cunts stays away, you fucking gypsy. Come here and take us a square go then. Or do you only hit birds? I lose my temper and start shouting down the phone. Fuck your fucking bird! Think you're going to stab my fucking pal and get away with it? You're lucky I didn't start fucking the 2 years. Aye, wee Azzy, you'll be stabbing nae cunts, son. Young team fucking boys run this show. I'm fucking raging now. Uncontrollable. Matty speaks again. So you coming down to take us a square jig? Or do we need to bounce up and come through your ma's fucking door? Come to my ma's door and you know what's going to fucking happen. How, what's going to happen, wee man? You're a fucking pussy, Azzy. You only hit birds. No real cunts like us. Young toy in your fucking house. You better get down here right now, or I guarantee we're coming through your ma's door tonight. Maybe I'll break her beak, see how she likes it. Come to my ma's door, I'll fucking kill you. I hang up before I smash my phone off the wall. The next tune comes on. Mumbai Traffic, Ashley Wallbridge, the last one on the CD. And the rain starts pissing down outside. Dark clouds taking the rest of the sky. I'm in a frenzy now, hunting for something to pull on top of my long sleeve Rangers top. My eyes settle on the holy grail in waterproof fashion. It's got a few battle scars, just like the wearer, but no matter, because this jacket is legendary. Berkos, Mera Peak. I can't think anything better anywhere as I stick my wine bottle in my pocket and I fly down the stairs to make the call. All this mad beast patter is designed to wind us up, push us over the edge. They're all at it, try to shame us to fight. These toy cunts are my particular devil, try to fucking ride and torment me, try to tempt me back to the old ways of violence and the never-ending wheel of life here. And in the end, you have to give battle. Thank you.
Did anyone get you want you to tone down the dialect?
Loads, yeah. God, I get rejected 300 times. That might not be a surprise to anybody. But that's a really tragic moment because as he's been rejecting violence and he's been doing his very best, he's off drugs, he's off alcohol, he's doing his very best. And just at that moment, all the good effort just slips, you know, and he's just tempted because people threatened his mum. So, and that's the way it happens, you know.
So you need is one trigger, though, isn't
I know.
it? Tense up.
It is like Jekyll and Hyde, that moment, you know. So, quite powerful, thank you for
Yeah, it's amazing.
You said one swear word, I didn't imagine amalgamation.
I missed a few.
That's you.
You held a fuck back.
Can you tell us a bit about the impact for you of reading? I'm sure you've talked about this a million times already, but of reading Trainspotting when you were 16.
Trainspotting, albeit we were separated by 35 miles along the M8 motorway and separated by 30 years of experience, spoke to me in a way that I just never expected to be spoken to. You know, and I said this earlier, that I used to say I didn't care about my life, you know, and I didn't care about my future or my trajectory or education. And I wore that like a Medal of Honour, you know, like a brooch. And Trainspotting challenged that notion, you know, and for once I cared about something. And hope's a dangerous thing, you know, and it gave me hope for something else. Because 3 of my friends had just died of heroin overdoses. And I was with one of them when he overdosed the first time. And his friends, I had phoned I was only 16, and I'd phoned an ambulance to save this boy's life. And one of the boys that was there pulled the phone cord out the wall before I gave the address. And, you know, managed to get the ambulance with some of that language that you just heard. The boy lived, but within a year, both of the boy who pulled the phone cord and him both died, and also one of my friends died as well. And I went to school with his wee sister as well, so it was a real dark period in my life, you know, and my faith in humanity was an all-time low. And then I read this book, I just came across it by chance, you know, a girl sitting next to me in school had said, "Have you read Trainspotting?" And I said, "No, I thought that was just a film." She said, "You should read it." Read that, I did, you know. So I started telling teachers then I'm going to go to university and study English. That was met with healthy scepticism, you know, because I'd put this Spartan performance of being a tough guy, you know, and somebody who didn't care, and now I did care, and I was trying to convince people of that, and they didn't believe me. So, changed everything.
So you've written about a community that's really rarely seen in fiction. I mean, probably the last time it was seen was Trainspotting.
Yeah.
And then you've got like memoir like, say, Kerry Hudson's Lowborn, which is amazing, but is memoir. Do you think, how important is it to you to get, you know, the real life experiences of those people in front of a wider community? Because there's no voice for that community.
These people are excluded on many levels, you know, they're excluded monetarily, they're economically, you know, their life trajectory. Some areas of Glasgow, the life trajectory is like, the life expectancy goes down to 55 for men. 55, you know. 1,339 fatal overdoses in Scotland. It's been rising more people die in Scotland of fatal overdose than in the full of the United Kingdom's roads. And if you think about how many road accidents there are, the numbers are staggering, you know. And nobody seems to care, you know, because they're not the electorate, you know, they're not people who vote, they're disenfranchised people, you know, of low value and low worth, you know, and the words and the language that they speak in is even lower value. So super important.
Yeah, it's because we've got 3 authors and 3 books to go to. It feels so wrong to cut this conversation off, but we kind of kind of got to. But I did want to bring Graham in, because you, the other Graham, you write about class as well, and your, you know, the characters, you know, R.D. Lang and Colin Wilson, in, you know, who were walk-on parts in your books. They were, you know, a lot of those key figures in the 60s were resolutely working class, and they stuck with it. Whereas by the time we kind of reached, well, say by the time I came to London in the 80s and early 90s, it was all about passing. It was about, oh, you know, don't tell everyone your dad's a bricklayer, don't, you know, all of that stuff, pretend you're not. Do you think we're seeing a change back to, you know, not embracing it, but to talking about it and including it as a really important in the diversity conversation?
Including it?
Class.
I don't know. I don't think, I mean, the period I'm writing at, there was an element of meritocracy, at least for men, and I'm slightly conscious that it's only the men have been speaking so far.
Yeah. Don't worry, she's got a whole...
Oh, I'm muted. You know, this is the history. It's repeating itself.
Just very briefly, I don't think we're living too much in a meritocracy at the moment, and we seem to be governed more by elites than we were in the 70s and 80s. So I think it's a conversation we need to be having, yeah. Okay, well, I've been put in my place about the fact that you haven't said anything yet. Sorry, no.
No, I don't know.
Off you
Lots
go.
of hands towards me now.
Now is your moment. Can you read us a couple of poems from Hand Over Mouth Music?
Thank you. So Hand Over Mouth Music won the Saltire in December 2019. And then we all went into our supposed hibernation. And I was actually quite lucky in the lamplit, luminary, liminal world of lockdown, because I was able to work on my memoir, and I also had a lot of commissions and projects that I was able to do from home, which was really exciting. And I know a lot of people weren't really happy with the world turning virtual, and I found it to be like really expansive and got to like reach out to all these different diverse platforms. And I also was involved in this incredible commission to name new streets in Edinburgh. This new public development started up in Edinburgh Park. And there is a sculpture park there with 12 legendary poets, bronze herms of their heads. And from those 12 poets, I researched them intensely, trying to understand and grapple with the idea of why they were selected. And out of those 12, 9 of them were white men, and 4 women, and 1 mixed race, and 1 homosexual. But we can see that, you know, it's not just class, it's ethnicity, it's race, it's sexuality, gender, you know, there's so many disproportionate like priorities and privileges, I think, that we all generally go through. But yes, I've been fortunate, things have been happening. It doesn't feel like 2 years went by. So I'm going to read a couple of 3 poems from here. I've been asked to read the title poem, Hand Over Mouth Music, and then 2 more short ones. Hand Over Mouth Music. It is the ceremony of my father's 2nd wedding. The entire brooding family gather to clean, cook, arrange the celebration. Women huddle in corners, bending and twisting under long robes. Some sway like the tide as they wash the floor with rags. The lonely satellites of their eyes repeat, a gaze passed down through generations, a way of looking at the world. The women stay close together, exhausted, pregnant, bleeding in each other's arms. They have their music, hand over mouth, tongue under teeth, a sound they put to songs, a siren sound they wrap themselves around. This is their blues, a work song without words, 1 call and they all chorus. The men smoke and smack and shout and smack their children, are waited on like kings, feasts of fruit prepared. I watch my father's new bride, preparing the night in the dark alcove of her bedroom, removing her bodily hair. Nobody minds my presence. They want me to learn. She swabs herself in rubies, paints her face, nakedness, lotion, perfume mixes with the smell of onions, olive oil, and I step outside for fresh air. Father follows to tell me that our next visit will be my wedding, then kisses the top of my head before going back inside to shadow. Hand over mouth, I stand with salt on my lips, staring at the blurring hands of old men who played cards in the dust under the stars. This is called Summer of Funerals. This is 2 years old. During the Summer of Funerals, I turned myself inwards, tried to understand death without being vaccinated against it. For the most part, I was drowning in some monumental river before a stiffened crowd. Whalebone and bloodletting starts with a quote by Albert Camus. In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. I have spent the short summer days scanning the treasure in the tan skin that finds its first wrinkles, searching all of the sea's calm and calamities that negotiate behind the eye's thin cellophane. In the background, there are wars, 1,000 screens of the universe, manipulated images set to self-destruct in mentally fumed living rooms. I switch off the world. Its synopsis, headlines, heavy lies, false maps. Oceans were toxic. Parents turned on their children. Riots ruled over capitals. Waves wiped out consensus. Strangers united in the rubble, pulling up what was left of their lives from the residual lives of other people. Medals, shoes, water-damaged photographs, a brocade of material existences, the vaulted throat of the afterlife coughed out an emission of our spent jewels. At times like this, madness could have crept in so easily. A depression as deciduous as plants. The macro sheen of night coats the sky. Reoccurring dreams of whalebone and bloodletting. The mind offers the body a sword, a shield of wire netting. I wait for the sharp claws of winter, holding the appetite of the sun still panting within me. The dry roots of the evergreen confirm nothing but thirst.
I could easily listen to you three read all night. Have you missed it?
Well, because I've been able to do it from my bedroom, and there's other things I've been involved in, like poetry trails, like reading outdoors and being involved with. The thing about poetry and the difference from poetry and prose is really that we have this performance space, so we can go and be part of entertainment with musicians and have animation films and have poetry performed in a gallery with an art installation. I mean, there's just so many poetry in public places. I mean, it's growing. There's something really kind of powerful about it at the moment. So I don't feel like I haven't had opportunities. I actually feel very fortunate. I feel like I've been able, and then I've been working on my memoir as well, like slipping into that other side. And so, yeah, time's been good.
How are you finding the memoir? It's very different writing.
Yeah,
it's a lot of words by comparison.
It is a lot of words. You see, I've been writing diaries since I was 16, and so I've always been, I think I started off with prose, and it wasn't until I went to university at 17 that I studied English literature, and then I did my master's in Edinburgh in creative writing right after, and it was only then that I really understood what poetry was and how I had to kind of polish the diamonds from the coal, and that takes a lot of intense pressure to break. Poetry is an abbreviation of language, but it's not just tuition, it's actually using your intuition. And I have been told off actually saying this is a bit too poetic and make it more about the narrative, tell the story, don't get lost in all these images. So it's hard to separate the two, but at the same time I want to be steadfast in knowing that the poetry exists in prose, I mean, it's the formation of the words really rather than the sentences. And I think there's a place for it. But it's called Loner Lust, and it's about a desire to be alone, to all the traveling that I've done alone, searching different landscapes and human condition and things. Because, I mean, who owns these general themes, life, love, heartbreak, searching one's autonomy? You know, it belongs to everyone. And as writers, we just try and dig deep and find some kind of deeper meaning and weave this giant tapestry and just provide some kind of healing and hope, I think, by negotiating language and navigating something more. I guess when we've had all of this kind of cold, desensitizing stuff from the media at the moment in amidst all the chaos and crisis, we need something that speaks to the soul more, something that's more spiritual that we can hold on to, I think.
Do your two cultures that you live within, living between them, does it make it easier or harder to see clearly, do you think?
I think it gives me a little bit of a colourful background. Yeah, I feel like the human condition at large, we're a mass cross-pollination of diverse culture and colour and class, and there's just so much there. And I think to be ignorant and remain, I mean, am I a Scottish writer? Am I a Scottish Algerian? I was born in London. I moved when I was 14. Sometimes I'm involved in British anthologies. I mean, where is my room of one's own? Where is my space of one's own to play around with? And I think that as a poet, I don't think we belong anywhere. We need to let go of that sense of belonging, because where do we belong but only in these momentary fragments in a nebulous scale of things until from the maternity ward to the crematorium. This is the journey that we're on, and I think that we just have to kind of stick our heads into it more rather than just kind of deal with the surface things and become quite numb, I think, to what's happening.
What about you, Graham? Do you think of yourself as a Scottish writer, and what does that mean?
I don't think of myself as a Scottish writer. I mean, I am a writer. I think it took me a long time to call myself a writer and say, yes, I'm, when people would ask me, what do you do in the pub? Even after His Bloody Project came out, I would sometimes say I'm just a painter and decorator, which was what I was doing for money at the time. And sometimes I would say something really Scottish, like, oh yeah, I do a bit of writing, so it took me a long time to say I was a writer. And it's only when you have your work is out there a wee bit that people try to define you as what kind of writer you are. And maybe that's kind of what you're touching on, Janet. I don't know. So I am Scottish, I'm a writer, but I don't think of myself as a Scottish writer. I mean, 3 of my books are set outside Scotland, 2 in France, 1 in London. And I don't know if this is something you were touching on. Just if I have this desire to remain an outsider, I think it's important to be outside looking in,
yes,
and not become part of something and feel comfortable. I think maybe that's why 2 of my novels are set in France, where my French is really terrible. So when I sit in a cafe or a bar, I can zone out of the language, and I go there to actively observe. I don't know if that's something a sort of deliberate practice.
That's when you're looking out instead of looking in, less insular, but more observing. Yeah.
Yes, and it's like you pick up on little things, and they go straight in my books. But other people, I mean, with His Bloody Project, in a way, it's a really Scottish book. What a critic called it a love letter to Scottish literature, and listed all the influences on my book that that were attributed to me, and many of those books I hadn't read, and so but what's interesting is I am Scottish, and my mum's from the Highlands, my dad's from Glasgow, and so somehow maybe I'm immersed in these 2 cultures in Scotland, the Central Belt and the Highlands, and it all filters in somehow, even if you're not consciously channeling it.
When you look into your genealogy, under the sorcery of science, you can find out that you're this just so many different places that we seep from. My mum's Scottish. I gave birth to 2 daughters in Scotland, and I feel very kind of encapsulated in that landscape. And I think land is important. I feel really protected on Scottish soil. Like I'm guided, like I'm in touch with my ancestors in a way, being there. And when I'm away, I do feel this homing instinct to return, you know, as maybe an astronaut would to return to Earth from space. But
Graham, they've both talked about being outsiders and sitting outside looking in. And you have really looked in the young team.
Yeah, absolutely. This was like a kind of, people often say, was it cathartic? You know, and I think that's a simplification, you know, because I didn't just write it, then I felt fantastic, you know, about a lost youth and, you know, 10 years of gang culture and drug addiction and then 10 years writing about it and I'm 30 now. And, you know, I've never really done anything bar think about being in gangs when I was a teenager, you know, and I'm in this kind of weird state, like I don't really know who I am now or how to define myself. And I think, to be honest with you, as soon as I open my mouth, I'm a Scottish writer by default, you know, because I've got a very strong Scottish working class accent, you know, that I can't sanitise or modify in any way, so...
Do you think of yourself as a Scottish writer?
Yeah. Someone told me recently I'm part of the Scottish canon now, which was nice.
You are, yeah.
We're going to be fired out of it.
Well, I don't know. I don't think of myself in high ways like that, you know. I think about the community a lot, you know, and I don't mean to sound noble doing that, but I've took this work, and the success of this novel, becoming a Times bestseller, was because 1,000 people, or how many, it was Glasgow that they went and bought it. You know, the city embraced me as a son of Glasgow, you know, in Lanarkshire, and young men who had never read books went into bookstores, you know, and nervously, you know, and I know quite a few booksellers, and they tell me, like, these guys come in and they're tough guys, you know, and they've never been in a Waterstones, you know, and that matters to me, you know, so and get into prison, you know, and doing it. So I was lucky, I went to university instead of prison, you know, and I tell the guys, lots of people foreseen me being in prison, but I don't think they seen me teaching English in prison, you know. Yeah, so.
What does that mean to you?
Oh, it means everything, you know, and like when I was doing that, 'cause I'm still young, I'm only 30, right?
keep saying that.
I know, I'm still young, you know.
Yeah, man, all right, man up.
You're the youngest.
It's strange, you know, like me teaching men who are 45 or 50, you know, and sit in front.
God,
Men of 50 can't learn anything.
Turned into an age, just like, you know, some of these men have never read a book. Right, and they're in their late 40s, right? Their literacy is basic at best, you know, and I heard a few of them only signed up. They'd never did, you know, some of these guys are serving life sentences. They'd never engaged with the education programme until they heard I was coming, you know, and it's overwhelming.
Well,
and
they
affecting,
feel
you know?
less like outsiders now and less ostracised because you're the voice of the people. You're giving them a voice.
Yeah, and you know, I seen them passing this note at the back of the class, and I was thinking, God, I'm like a proper teacher now. They're passing notes about me, and, you know, and they came up at the end. One of them kind of shuffled up to me and he said, "We got you a card," and it was a thank you card. You know, and it would I brought a tear to a glass eye. You know, one guy wrote in really bad handwriting, I might add, that he scribbled, "You have awoken a passion that has lain dormant within me for many years." And I'll never forget that, you know. So it was very powerful.
If you can just do that,
I would
that's
recommend all of our political class to go and spend a week in a prison, you know, and they're not master criminals, guys. They're people who came from broken homes, you know, who have endured massive trauma, and they might have committed a crime, or will have definitely committed a crime unless they were wrongly accused. But, but you know what I mean? I kind of expected these pantomime villains, these cloaked master criminals, and they weren't like that at all. It was just broken and pain, you see, you know, brokenness.
I think without improbable suffering, we never get to show our brilliance in revolt.
Well, you know, it was a very affecting thing, and I didn't expect it to be like that, but it's something that's changed me as a person, you know. So it's worthwhile. I'm back in there doing next month, so doing a full course again. Mental health, talking about it this time. So, male mental health.
Here's to another 30 years. Yeah.
Both, there's a question from the audience here, is that when you were reading, the first Graham sounded like an audible, and the second Graham sounded filmic, and Jeannette, you just sounded amazing and poetic. But the point of the question really is, did you envisage your book being translated to other media at all when you were writing it? And it's particularly pertinent because both of you guys have your books in development don't you, by the same production company?
Yeah. I mean, just speaking for myself, I mean, I always, you know, at a certain point in the process, read out what I've written, and, you know, in particular, you know, passages that I know that I will end up reading at events such as this. I think it's really hard with a 90,000 word novel to hone the prose in the way that a poet does. You know, like every syllable should be as perfect as a pebble. You know,
You have to be a Hollywood actor to do that.
So, but yeah, I don't think about it being performed, but I think about performing it myself, and I think I want every sentence to be perfect, but it's really hard to achieve that in a novel. It's not poetry, and sometimes, you know, as the narrator says, the truth can lie in infelicity, and if it's too polished and too perfect, and you iron out all the weirdness. I mean, the first sentence of my book is like awkward and long, and it took me ages to work out how to read it. But it's awkward and long because the character, this is the way she expresses herself, and that's totally crucial. And I think it's something that Graham's book, which I'm reading at the moment, which is absolutely tremendous. It's got this absolute authenticity about it, and even although I'm writing about somebody completely different, and to an extent always have done, I'm striving for that same authenticity of language, you know, and it's always for the reader to try to make a judgment about whether you achieve it. But no, I just think about what I'm doing. It's hard enough, you know.
Graham, you read The Young Team on Audible. What was that experience like?
Surprisingly emotional. Believe it or not, I gave life to characters that I'd overlooked and disregarded, you know, and oftentimes I think lots of the characters had been disregarded in life, you know, and overlooked, you know, and just people at Bruni, and I kind of lived the stuff I'd written in a real emotional way. And I was during coronavirus, so I was in a studio alone, and it was done digitally via a voice coach and on video link. And there was a couple of passages, you know, I had seen a wee glint in their eye, you know, because they were a bit tearful. And one's similar, like I read, where it was a battle moment. He said, that was fearsome, you could be an actor. And I said, well, I wasn't acting, you know, it was part of my life. And, you know, I learned that kind of madness from people living it and doing it. So it was quite powerful, it was emotional.
Are you going to be very involved in the development?
I am story consultant, so that's probably a nice way of saying like soft screenwriter via me, you know. So yeah, I've been at everything, to be honest with you. It's a tough book to adapt because it's very psychological. You know, there's a lot of like inner Azzy, you know, and that's where the kind of prose gets beautiful, people tell me, you know, and it's hard to translate that on screen. So it's an unenvious job, I think.
And what next, really? I mean, you're working on Loner Lust.
Yep. And on the last chapter in Curtis Brown Agency, they have an interest in it, but they want me to change things, less diaristic prose, less poetry, more nature writing. And so I'm kind of torn between how I'm changing it and what but it's been 5 years writing it, and you know, these things don't happen overnight. It's a harvest. It's a lifelong harvest of collecting and sieving those gold nuggets from the stream, you know. So yeah.
Graham, how long do you take?
This book took me 3 years to write, which I think is okay, you know.
Yeah.
His Bloody Project took me kind of 2.5 years to write. I wasn't a full-time writer at that point, and I mean, although I am a full-time writer now, which is, you know, I think an amazing sort of privilege, and just to be able to make a living out of writing is really, really hard. We need you to buy our book, preferably from an actual bookshop, if you don't mind. I'm going to return to France for the next book, and I've got those two French books, so I want it to be a trilogy, and just finish that project. So come November, December, I'm hoping to get into the dark Scottish months where there's nothing else to do. I'm going to go up north and try and bang out some words.
Brilliant. And your publishers are not going, can we have another Scottish one?
No, they let me do what I want. You know.
We've got a big row of red noughts staring at us, so I'm afraid we're all out of time. copies of all our panellists' books are available in the actual bookshop round the corner, and they are all going to be signing them. So keep them in Buckfast.
No, not anymore. I'm
No.
6 years I've not drunk, so...
Keep them in peppermint tea.
Yeah.
You're a cheap date.
I am indeed.
I am not a cheap date.
Right, guys, get a room. Come on. I don't feel like being in a sandwich.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And please join me in thanking the Grahams and Jeannette for being such fascinating speakers.
And Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.